Okay, here we go. This is Frantz Kantor here, cartoonist illustrator, toon talker, among other things, attempting to do a live stream. Okay, so during the lockdown I do these little sketches, and I like caricatures because they're kind of cool. They give me the really the ability to have a chance to play with subjects, with drawing faces. So the subject of our caricature today is this lovely lady here, and if you don't know who she is, that's Goldie Hawn. That's from the laughing era, late 60s, 68 I think it was. It went on for about 4 seasons. So she's very iconic. She's a really funny, very funny, personable lady. Not really known as a serious actress. Of course, she married Kurt Russell, and he's also an icon from the 60s, formerly from Disney films, and then into action films, and then lately into Tarantino films, which is pretty good. She's a really mysterious character, so we're going to explore her a little bit. She's a very sweet character, but I remember her from this era mostly. I've seen all of her films, but I really, everybody loved her, fell in love with Goldie in this Lafayette era, 1968, because she was sort of like the go-go dancer with body paint. So she's very, very lovely personality and really infectious smile. And she had this sort of short haircut, Mia Farrow haircut. I don't know what else you describe it. The section breaks with laughing were like go-go dancing. She did go-go dancing with body paint with slogans and things on her. This is it with Carl Reiner. So she's really, really funny, full of energy. I'm going to actually use this photograph because it's a 3/4 view of her, and she's got this very distinctive teeth or toothy smile. So she reveals a lot of like a very squarish smile. So we'll look at that anyway, the way that we can depict that. She's got some features that we can play with. As you can see, her eyes are a very big part of her. And in this era, sort of like that tousled Brigitte Bardot look that was very popular in the 60s. Before the teased look in the 70s. This is from Private Benjamin. This is from Overboard with Kurt Russell. They made a good, cute couple. This is from There's a Girl in My Soup with Peter Sellers, the 60s. So, she was born in 1945, so she's 70. She's in her 70s, early 70s. And she's very, very iconic. As I said, some of the films, I'll just read out some of the films you would have seen her in, like Overboard, First Wives Club, Snatched, Death Becomes Her, which is a black comedy, Private Benjamin, Bird on a Wire with Mel Gibson, House Sitter, with Martin. Cactus Flower, Foul Play, Chevy Chase, Wildcats. What else? Swing Shift, Butterflies Are Free, Sugar Express. So, seems like old times. The Out of Towners, Deceived, There's a Girl in My Soup, Shampoo, which is in the 70s, Protocol, and of course Laughing, which is what I kind of first saw. Everybody first saw her in Laughing. So this is the photograph we're going to use, and what I've done here is I've kind of done a thumbnail, quick little thumbnail, just to explore some of the possibilities that we could use for exaggeration, some of the elements. And she's got this very squarish lip shape, her smile. So that's kind of nice. Also, her hair is a big feature here because it's sort of built up and it's got this really interesting counterbalance. So there's a shape that comes off her head which diminishes the size of her head because of its volume, I guess. So it's built up. It's a short Mia Farrow hairstyle, or a short haircut, but it's kind of got a bit of volume. Her eyes are a big feature, so we're going to play them up. We're going to make them quite large. Luckily, she's got very beautiful, looks like grey eyes, I guess. She's got a little soft, roundish nose, and she just has this big smile, which has got this sort of nervous affectation of this square lip shape, which we'll explore. So, as well as that, one other thing we want to consider is where do we get this? Where do we focus our attention? We focus our attention in this sort of mask zone here. So we're looking at the relationships between the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, right? So that doesn't mean we keep everything proportionate. We just keep an eye on where they're going, because you know how lines tend to form around shapes so that we can get some kind of a proportionate balance between the different elements. You can see on this model here the muscles around the eyes are quite profound, right? And look at all of the intricate pulleys and systems they've got here for expression. And this is just on the skull. Now, this is not peculiar to humans. Dogs, cats, maybe not dolphins, dogs, cats, and land mammals have these sort of intricate pulley systems, but they're very undeveloped. So even in chimpanzees or gorillas or orangutans, they have quite a lot of expression available to them, but they don't really use them. So man is the only person that uses these pulley systems, these muscles and tendons and things, for an intricate mode of communication. So that's like facial communication. We use our hands, like I'm doing now, and we use our faces for very, very intricate communication. So that's very particular and very peculiar to humans. Consequently, a lot of people find it very difficult to draw faces and hands because of the complexity and the amount of concentration, or the amount of awareness about whether or not the faces are realistic, or the expressions are right, or the likeness is right. So there's a lot of criticism involved in the drawing of the face. Certainly in the drawing of the caricature, there is also criticism, but a caricature is a way of inviting you to play with proportions and scales. Okay, so the head itself is usually larger than the body. And they're also reflected different elements like the eyes or the nose or the ears or something else, different proportions. So it invites you to sort of set up a play mentality so that you'll be able to have fun in the project. And of course, you know, learning is in, you can't learn anything unless it's fun. There's no point. What's the point? So what I've done is I've taken this sort of thumbnail, I've explored it a little bit bigger on the tone paper with some brown pencils. So we're going to be using brown pencils, and we're going to be using a black pencil, which is a polychromo, which is a high quality, but it's quite a harder pencil. These are Prismacolors, which are soft. This is a polychromo. This is a Prismacolor. There's not much left of it now, but they're quite soft. They're very, very, very delicate. So I wouldn't put that into a pencil sharpener unless it's a battery operated one, which I've got here. Just pardon my head for a moment. The reason why I bought this was because it's pretty safe. This is a soft pencil, and it will tend to break a lot of the times. All right, so let's proceed. Now, with drawing anything, you approach things in a very simplistic fashion so that you create an entry level to the drawing, right? So over here, I'm just sort of looking at some simple shapes to try to help with the exploration of details. So to me, caricature is a matter of simplification and exaggeration. There's no point in exaggerating something that's really difficult and complex. So you tend to start with any drawing in a very simple fashion to try to explore the overall impression, overall shape. And then in there you start to layer in the exaggeration, layer in the detail into the new parameters, the new goalposts, for example. So if you try to think of it as a game, that's pretty handy. So I moved the goalposts, but the game is still in play. I think this is quite a safe. I could exaggerate this even more, actually, just thinking about this. But I'll resist. I just want to get a quick idea of her personality. So let's proceed, shall we? We'll try and get into the drawing. So I've chosen this photograph, so I think it's quite expressive, a nice sort of typical smile for her that we can tend to play with. And I tend to start after I get all of the rough, light pencil lines in there. I tend to usually start around the eyes. So I want to try to get some of the details. Now when you're drawing in the eyes, of course, it's a 3/4 view, so you're factoring in to the mix the concept of perspective, which means that if you're going to exaggerate this even further, in the mask zone here, we'll just draw that mask. So we've got the lips, or the mouth, and we've got the nose, and we've got these eyes. Now the eyes have, because this is a 3/4 picture of the face, a 3/4 pose of the face, it has perspective applied, which means that there is a certain, circles that appear facing us. When they're turned slightly away, they turn into ellipses. Okay, so that's an exaggerated version of it, but that's something we have to factor in. There's also like vanishing point references for any lines that are pointing away from us. So these are things you think about. There's no point in ruling them up because we're not sort of reflecting. We're not doing that exactly. You can put little guidelines like that in there, but the more you put in over this, the more there is to rub out. So it's probably best to keep all of the initial pencil lines quite light. All right, so now it's a matter of establishing the over these light areas, just a little bit of contrasting lines, just by pressing harder or using a slightly darker pencil. And eventually, I'm going to be using the black pencil, which is going to be it's going to help us establish more contrast. It's got lovely eyelashes, of course, false eyelashes and mascara, which means that something else can present a little bit of a problem, because that, of course, obscures a little bit of the anatomy. as long as you have, you understand that there is anatomy underneath that may be obscured, you should be okay. Actually, let's try to use this. It's a nice harder line. So that's the white, that's the inside of the lid there. So you just look back and forth and refer to the reference material. The reference, of course, is guiding you in many ways, and some of the geometry, anatomy is hidden. So you've got to see through that and correct it wherever it's appropriate. I know that sounds like, well, how does that work? Because aren't you working from the photograph exclusively? No, you're not. You're correcting the photograph. So a lot of reference material, you just use it as a way of confirming what the overall hierarchy or the overall effect is, but always balance it against your knowledge of structure underneath. So if a muscle should be there, or a bone or something should show, by virtue of your understanding of anatomy, and it doesn't in the photograph, then maybe compromise, like look at ways of creating that sense of purpose and reality. So the purpose of this whole exercise is not to draw a photograph. It's not to draw photographically. The photograph is there to give you more truth, more details. But ultimately, the anatomy is really something that you have to understand independently of the reference. And I know that seems to be really difficult, but after drawing many, many faces, and you find that there is a underlying process independent of the working from the references, an independent process going on in your head of analysis and comparison. Okay, so a lot of this gives you the ability to, say, move geometry around and keep it with a certain sense of purpose and appropriate focus. Pencil's really lovely for capturing hair, like you just really focus on the patterns of the different locks of hair. So, the shading, rather than independently looking at lines, it will do that anyway, but just think of them as tresses, as sort of ribbons of shiny material that have a hair pattern in them. That kind of gives you, I like these stray hairs as well. I think they're something to play with. Let's do something with them. It's kind of nice. It's loose. Right. Just push ahead. Now, this is going to take me a while because what I'm doing is I'm fixing up a lot of the perspective that is in here. I'm exaggerating the perspective a little bit. So that's one thing that I'm doing. I'm also studying the shape of her eyes from what I can see in the photograph, and then sort of comparing that to what shape they really are underneath the mascara and the lighting. Sometimes you find that there just isn't the detail for you to work from. So you've got to experiment. You've got to sort of find it with the pencil. And sometimes you make errors, and you have to erase back, which is fine. It's good, because every time the more errors you make, the easier it is for you to proceed to the next level, to the next point, and keep going. You build up on errors. You build up on learning about the face, and every face has got certain attributes that are common to each other, and some that are peculiar to each personality. Some lovely pencil's really good with hair. Can describe these. Can describe hair very well. Okay. So far, so good. I need thick, wide. She's got very heavy eyelashes. So I've got to sort of adjust the anatomy to accommodate that. So there you go. I'm not hiding the anatomy, I'm just sort of adjusting it slightly, because now I've got the anatomy down. I think I feel it's okay, but I need to adjust the light and dark. So the lighting on this head is very interesting. It's coming in from the top left, which means that everything down on the bottom right hand side of the object, of the face, is going to be in shadow. So everything like the nose, the eye sockets, whatever, they're all going to have a shadow that respects the direction of the main light. Apart from that, I might sort of bring in like a side light, just to give more three-dimensional properties to the shape itself. It just means to lighten in, to bring into the umbra, the penumbra, a quality of reflective light or backlight or something, just to give it more a roundness in the lighting process. Alright, so this is a township look, so this is good. We're drawing in the shadows of the hair over here. Okay. So Goldie's a really interesting actress. I find myself hypnotized by her a lot in her films. She's really quite a layered performance. One that most people rave about, though, Private Benjamin. I never really got into that one, but certainly Bird on the Wire, I think, is probably one of my favorites. And apart from laughing, of course. This is nice. You have to be careful with the black when it comes over here too, because she has very blonde hair. Sometimes you can overdo contrasts, especially with blonde hair. It should be sort of wispy and light and like fairy floss. Okay, that's good. That'll do. She's got ears that stick out here, so we want to keep them in position. Yeah, that'll do. It's good. Okay, yeah, there's this long side log coming down here. We might decide to do something with that on the left as well, just to give it a bit of balance. That might work. Might work, yeah. Okay, get that. Excuse the noise of the dogs. So this is going quite well now. At the moment. Some little spider lines coming here. Some shadows from her eyelashes coming down here. Sort of crisscross the crisscross a little bit the wrinkles that form around the eye. You'd expect a lot of there's a lot of shape in her face, a lot of muscles in her face that you'd expect from an actress. Because they get a lot of work, especially her mouth. So we'll look at that a little bit closer as we go. So look at all of the details, the muscles, the folds, the wrinkles, etc. And remember, we're putting them into a new context. So we're highlighting certain attributes and forces as we go. Some nice muscle there. Remember, we're respecting the light, okay? So the direction of the light, the shadows. Yeah, that'll do. I like that. Right, so because this is the 60s, she's got very pale lips. And we need to refer back to that. It's the era of the metallics, I think, or the very light pastels. So all the direction was to the eyes. And she's got very expressive eyes. So we can capture some of that. Okay. Good. I'll just get the sharpen happening over here. So, any red pencil, any brown pencil, this is kind of a way of mimicking the classical way of drawing that Ingres did in the neoclassical period during Napoleon, or even Da Vinci in the Renaissance. And of course, going back to, cave drawings in Europe, in France, Spain, they used white pigment, black pigment, and brown pigment, essentially to draw. So the idea of drawing with color pencils rather than graphite is a different technique. So you're using toned paper to meet you basically halfway. So what we're essentially doing is using the white pencil to draw light and the black pencil to help us with the contrast, to draw darker shadows. So it's a sculptural effect to the drawing process. Okay, we can play with the some lovely shine on her teeth, which we can manipulate a little bit to play with that. Seems to work all right. Look at each of the values of the teeth as different sizes and things, because that helps give the character more personality. So all the teeth have a different shape and emphasis in the drawing. So the caricature process is quite versatile in a way. You're doing caricatures of the person and of the individual elements that make up the person. That's really an interesting concept, I think. If there are any differences between sizes, scales of things like these teeth, for example, I'm just exaggerating them to get some cool level of believable detail. Yeah, so here we go. That seems to be okay so far, so good. Now remember the perspective. So this is what's happening. You see the center line here that's acts over the center of the face, right? Goes between the eyes, over the nose, the middle of the nose, dissects it, and dissects everything else. That includes the teeth, obviously, right? So you get this sort of staggered effect. You were to slice it like bread, that's what you would get. So you need to think about that. So when you put in the center line, obviously the beginning of the front teeth, it's also echoed in the bottom row of teeth as well. So the center line moves back. Alright, so this is a very interesting shaped mouth. Now normally this sort of shape is somebody who's a little bit unsure, a little bit, like they make this sort of mouth shape. Children often make this mouth shape that means that they're awkward, type of expression. She seems to be very conscious of her zaniness, so she's a very zany person. I tend to think that this is her way of overcompensating for a level of shyness. Now, the amount of paint, in effect, the makeup from the era is very transformative, so it's a mask-like appearance. So there's a lot of hiding behind the makeup going on here. Okay, so that's what I'm detecting with this expression. Now, obviously, over time, that is lessened to a greater extent, where she's not so self-conscious. She's a bit more sure of herself. But the damage has already been done from a perspective of lines and position of muscles and forces at work and things like that. The level of what if you can do that? Yeah, that'll do. The muscles have moved into place already, so irrespective of how confident she is as an adult, it doesn't mean anything because these muscles have formed these shapes from her childhood, and that's that. And there's nothing you can do about it, except maybe surgery. But that tends to tighten everything up, irrespective of expressions. Expressions, wrinkles, forms, sags, bulges, all these sort of things are created from thoughts and emotions that play over the face over time. It's a lovely highlight in her lip. It's like a metallic copper or something. And I'm going to try to capture some of that later on. Got a tiny little chin, and I think we'll respect the fold of the lip and create a shadow over this form. Remember, the shadow's coming in, the light's coming in from the left, so you need to do that, right? You need to think about these things. Right, so far so good. Tiny little chin, beautiful little face. She's got like a little imp, a little elf. We call them elfin faces, don't they? They're sort of tiny, diminutive little faces. So like if she was in England, she'd be a dolly bird. It's a very petite, cute, elfin type of face. Also, she's hidden with makeup. There's a mole on her upper lip. Let's see if we can bring back here. You can just basically see where it's supposed to be over there. So you might just refer back to that. There's also a couple of spots here and there. Yeah, you can see it there. Okay, so these are just little details. They don't mean very much, but I like to reference things if I can. It's very cute. Look at that. That's lovely. Lovely personality. Let's go back to our reference. Where is it now? Yeah. Okay. Off we go. Happy with it. It's quite safe. It's not sort of overly distorted, I think. But that's cool. The other thing I think what we might play with is in that haircut, which is a bit longer than normal. I think there's a bit of body at the back, and I might try to bring that in because we've changed the size of things. So even though it's obviously not in the picture because her neck is not this small in the picture. She's also got quite a big Adam's apple, so we'll refer to that as well. Adam's apples happen. It's not a male versus female thing, it's just a thing. It would depend, I think, on the use of your larynx, the use of your voice. You'd expect a stronger neck with her performance, her ability to project. Yeah, that'll do. What I was going to do is see this lock that's coming down here. It'd be good to have it kind of reflected on the other side of the head. So just sort of give a nice balance and appropriate level of detail, I think. Now I've removed the corner from here with her head, so the rest of the frame, this framing element's nice way of capturing the action and establishing a hierarchy, a composition, if you will, and a way of exploring negative space. So all of this is negative space, and she's obviously positive space. So the idea is to create a sense of dynamic balance. All right, here we go. So it's a way of, there's in the drawing process, this particular part of the drawing process, it's sort of a way of referring to, the 7 elements of art in a drawing, in a single drawing. So the 7 elements are line and shape, form and tone. Line and shape, form and tone, texture, colour, and space. So the space is we're referring to as the figure in an environment. So we're establishing a form of environment by having this 3-dimensional construct of a character standing in front of this pattern that's sort of like a window in a way. Okay, so let's get into the black pencil. The black pencil, we're actually going to be using probably some black ink as well. So we'll play with that. But I don't want to make too much of a meal of it with the hair, because the hair is supposed to be blonde after all. So I don't want to overstep the contrast too much. This is quite a fun little assignment for me. I love drawing caricatures. A lot of caricaturists find women very, very cool to draw, because you're not you're in sort of a different play mode, right? So what you're trying to do is capture a lot of the personality of the subject, and it becomes like a very interesting activity. So you're reading into the face certain things that are fun. Smiles, personalities, expressions, thoughts, emotions, all of these things happen in the face, and they show up through these patterns, these lines and wrinkles and things like that. And it's very cool to discover them, because, well, who doesn't like looking at people's faces and, thinking about, well, what caused that wrinkle? Is that her husband? Is that an ex-boyfriend? What caused that wrinkle? So it's like, every wrinkle tells a story, I guess. So the faces themselves have a story that you reveal with a pencil. The story doesn't have to have a literal meaning or a narrative that's black and white, that's really overt. It could be very subtle. But, a lot of things, as I said, subtlety over time is quite a potent force. I mean, look at the Grand Canyon, formed by a subtle formation of water trickling, and then eventually causes more and more water and more force, and over millions of years it's gouged out a big hole. It's the same with thoughts and emotions coming from, or the effect of thoughts and emotions on the face. Again, this is peculiar to people. It's not something you'll find in animals. Animals don't use their face the same way. So it's almost like we have the same basic structure, but animals are nowhere near as advanced in its use. We can attribute human characteristics. It's lovely when we do that to animals, anthropomorphize our relationship with animals. It's great. But I've yet to see a chimpanzee raise its eyebrows in surprise. She really is special. She's got a beautiful expression. Clear. Very clear expression. That's the thing I wanted to say. Very clear, which means it's very strong to draw, very definite position and shapes and strengths. Very cool. I love also the finding opportunity to put shadows in that are relevant to the shape of the object that you're drawing. So in this case, the upper lid and the socket, the beginning of the orbit, or where the nose sort of descends into the orbit. So let's go back to our skull. You can start to see there's a ring of muscles obviously around the orbits of the eye, the sockets of the eye, and they hold a lot of they're very flexible. Essentially they're there, in animals they're there to dilate and to contract and expand, to let light in or to protect the eyes from damage. But they're also, in humans, they're used to refine expressions and communication, visual communication. So they get a lot of use. So there's a lot of geography in the landform of the face that you can find in individual drawings of faces. And when you find that, it sort of gives you a good a level of familiarity to the process. It's like finding a familiar way home. So, sometimes I do it all the time in Melbourne because I'm not from Melbourne. I've got a Sydney map in my head, and consequently Melbourne I can get very lost in. But occasionally something will strike me as a familiar passage home, and sure enough it works, so it's the same thing for drawing the face. You'll find a certain amount of familiar territory or familiar direction, and it's great when that happens, because it's sort of like it feels like, there's an opportunity to discover, to to make the journey more enjoyable, more familiar. So I'm not sort of terrified of getting lost. So the black helps to establish more contrast. So you've built the structure already, right? So you're not outlining anything really. You're just helping the details a little bit more. Just helping the contrast. It's got lovely studio lit eyes. There's a couple of spotlights reflected in there, which we'll refer to. You can still see the perspective on the eyes, which is my intention, even though it's not so obvious in the reference. I like to put it in. I think it made sense to do that. Right, so again, underneath the mascara there's a structure of the eye and the eyelid, and the position of the true lashes rather than the false lashes. Obviously, false lashes are intended to start where the truer lashes end. So it's trying to be a continuation of the shape. Right, okay. Alright, here we go. That's good. Again, you've got an opportunity for putting the shadow in there, respecting the shadow coming in from the light source on the left. It's got very metallic eyeshadow, so that has a quite a contrasty effect. Dark eyelashes and very light eyeshadow on her upper lid, and it just increases the contrast. So normally that might present an issue with when you discover that when you're thinking about the geometry of the eye. So that needs your attention, doesn't it? You need to think about the geometry of the eye and use some judgment as to how the mascara is hiding or enhancing it. A lot of makeup is designed to hide features, so you can't ignore that, but it's better to understand the structure underneath as much as you can. So I'm not counting here, I'm not drawing in exactly what I can see, but I'm just giving it like a really good going at the impression of the hair, the difference, contrasts. Okay, so far so good. Let's continue on. Go with the lower lid here. Ooh, have to be careful. Whenever you put lines in, they outline things and give a different emphasis, so be very wary. So there's some nice shadows coming in here too from the light hitting the lashes. Even though you can't see the lashes, you can certainly see the shadows that are formed on the lower lid where the shadows are falling. Okay, how are we going with shadows here? Don't overplay the black. Black's there to help the browns. If the brown's not there, there shouldn't be any black. The black pencil really sits very strongly on the grey paper. It's there, to help a little bit of the contrasting tones in the shadow areas of the brown. So there should be some brown underneath to help it along. Yeah, that'll do. Okay, so I like this, what can I do with this? Okay. So with the black pencil, I'm kind of approximating an ink line, thick and thin ink line. I may go in there with a black ink line in any case, just to help establish that hierarchy even more. That looks like vampire marks, it's bothering me. I might just create the tone. That'll do. I was going to put some slogans on here. I may still do that. But, let's try to get some level of control in this mess of hair. Don't overdo it. So ear, shadow there. Should get darker over on this side because it's the opposite side of the light. So I think we'll just press a bit harder. I want to try to keep it a little bit out of focus as well, if I can. How do you do that with a pencil? Well, just keep the pencil light and loose and build up tone, gradually. I think that's okay. A bit more emphasis here and there. It's fine. Right. Sharpen again. There we go. So I really love her films. Very extraordinary performance. And there's like her earlier stuff with Laughing and There's a Girl in My Suit, that era. This era that I'm drawing. She had a different tone to her voice. And then like later on, 10 years later, and 20 years later, in Private Benjamin, she has a different timbre, like a deeper tone. So she's got a lot of versatility. And you wouldn't have thought that initially, She's very versatile. I'm a big fan of Kurt Russell. I liked Kurt Russell from the Disney days. The computer wore tennis shoes, and also from the Quest, Lost in Space episode, where he plays Kantor with Michael and Sarah. Sword fight between Michael and Sarah and Guy Williams was something. It was good. Guy Williams, of course, was Zorro. We're very well trained. There's a whole thing about sword fights for movies and TV. They have it's like an art form, like a martial art form like karate or kung fu. So I'm just using the grey where I can and putting in some, helping with the highlights here and there, but keeping it all relative. So looking at the photograph for a guide to the amount of highlights to put in. Now I can also help this with a little bit more with a pen, a brush pen, which I will in a sec. But I thought I'd take the opportunity to play with this. You can see by not overdoing the pencil with the hair, I can then get in these nice highlights with a pencil, the white pencil. And it's quite nice, shiny texture. Right, here we go. Good. We haven't finished the black, so let's go back. We'll go back. Back. Here we go. So look for opportunities to describe the individual characteristics of the teeth and noses and all these different shapes, you know. But keep in mind their individuality. So it's a balance between the structure which you can see or feel that have to be there implicitly with anatomy and structure, and how they're individually placed or changed somewhat to create some new form of emphasis. It's all part of the dialogue that you're creating, this story, this narrative of the face. It's telling a story of not just the recognition factor of the person, but hopefully a little bit about their personality and, you know, their story. I love drawing teeth. Teeth are great fun, you know, because there's the pattern of the teeth inside the structure, which you're referring to, but the individual shapes within the jaw structure, the interior jaw structure, the individual shapes are really interesting. I must remember to paint that hole there as part of the background. Note to self. There we go. Okay. Occasionally, I mean, I don't want to overdo the outlining of elements, but you know, occasionally you put something there to help with the brown pencil, just to sort of kick it up a little, just a touch. You know, not too much. Of course, where it hits the air like this is a definite contour, which you can play with. The thick and thin possibilities. I might just hit that with a brush pen in a sec, just to thicken it even more. Again, remember the shadows from the light, even though they're not in there, you've changed the proportions of the lips. So now that they're bigger in this dimension, they're also bigger in the Z depth. Okay. Green bikini. So far so good. I think it's quite a nice... What's happening over here though? This is a bit confusing. I'm going to fix this. It seems to be alright, but it's losing a bit of the... I think the brown would be helpful. That'll do. All right. Okay, so just continue cleaning and enhancing some elements, making it a bit clearer, sharper. Might put this paper too. I'm going to be working back over the hair in a second, so I don't want to sort of drag pigment across the drawing. Yeah. All right, more pencil, more white pencil. You know what, I'm going to put a little bit of a reflection coming in on the bottom jaw on that side. I might play it up over here as well. Okay, there's a hollow of her collarbones, and then the breastbone down here, be more reflective. Okay. All right, let's continue with the cheek. Give us some cheek. Yes. All right, that'll do. Settle down, cheek. So it's a bit of just helping the grey paper. I'm not colouring in, I'm just helping out the tone a little bit. Remember that her lips are metallic too. So the basic technique for pencil is to observe a sort of a crosshatch effect, you know, building layer one stroke at a time. So a bunch of strokes like this, and then like that. Typical cross-hatching technique. Don't scribble as much as you can. Give it some sort of directional quality. Might be handy to think about the form that you're drawing over. You know, that seems to work quite well. So the curved lines to follow the curves of certain surfaces, like the teeth, for example. You know, so they're very, very glossy here. I'm helping them out. I'm going to hit them with a brush pen in a moment to establish even more light, but at the moment it seems to be working all right. Cool. Reflected light inside the bottom lower teeth. They're not brightly lit, but they're picking up sunlight, and then metallic copper lipstick. And then we'll catch some light on the bottom of her chin there. What's happening over here? There's a light catching that wrinkle there. It'll do. Some light there. There. So again, use the paper to lean on to get this, to get into these, into the right position for these lines. They're just capturing some highlights. Again, I'm not colouring in. I'm just using the grey paper. I'm just helping out some of the contrast. That's good. And just continue, rinse and repeat. So far so good. Let's try to get some reflections happening here, some stronger. These are paint pens, these are Poscas, so they're acrylic paint pens. They're quite opaque, and they're going to help establish some harder highlights, which will help create the realistic contrast, I think. Just try to keep it within the realm of logical reflection and light position, right? So I know that this was a pencil, and it still is a pencil, it's still a drawing. I'm just helping it with some contrasting strokes of the pen, of the brush pen, of the paint pen. So what I need is elements to pop out subtly out of the white highlights which I've already established, and even within this the areas of using the white highlights, I'm creating stronger areas, stronger points. Right. Good. Here we go. Looks all right. It's what you might call like hotspots, I suppose. Areas that are either more reflective or, collect more light, reflect more light. That's all right. Now this is the same again, but it's a softer effect, so it's a brush rather than a point, which means it can get thick and thin, and it can get feather the intensity, so it can give us a nice sort of gradient effect. I think that'll probably do the trick for now. Now comes the interesting part. The decision to make what decision? What do I do with this background here? Let's try to use a black pen. Actually, before I do that, let's see if we can help with the contrasts a little bit more. Help the black That looks alright. Just helping it out a bit here and there. Okay, so where were we? We were going to hit it with some black paint. This is a paint pen that's going to be, it's a point, so it's going to be able to get us into a lot of these detailed areas. And I just want to, it's quite light, but I still don't want to go right up to the edge of the pencil if I can help it. Use a thicker version of this pen to fill in the gaps. I'll just cut in around the windows and the architrave just to get a start on it. Beauty about these pens is like they're a little bit better than Indian ink, because Indian ink's very opaque and tends not to go through the paper like texture does. You know, generally ink markers, spirit markers tend to go through the paper. This is an acrylic marker, so it tends to sit on top, which is kind of like Indian ink. Of course, Indian ink's known also for giving a very undesired effect of a metallic patina to the pooled ink. Sometimes it's not immediately obvious how much is pooled until it dries, and then it goes metallic. It goes weird. So this is a really nice way of ensuring that you get a nice flat effect. So most of the paint markers on the market, the Uniballs, etc., are glossy. They're dry glossy, which is not really good for scanning or reproducing, of course. So you don't want to, what's going on there? You don't want to spend your time post, fixing this, the drawings up. If you can help it. So I'm drawing the negative space to sort of punch the figure out even further. So I enjoy contrasting things happen, shapes and tones, textures, colours, etc. It's really nice to play with. Let's get a bigger pen. Where is it? Somewhere. That's a new ball. That's no good. Here it is. This is good. Look at that. Nice big, wide chisel tip. Fill in the gaps. Very good. Like this. So I like this period of her expression. I like the expression in these this era of her because it's yet to form into definite strong shapes. She's a very interesting woman, very interesting actress. Okay, let's down to the wire now. Here we go. Now I have to spell this out because otherwise I can't do two things at once. So G-O-L-D-I-E, Goldie, H-A-W-N, Hawn. Yeah. I resisted putting You Bet Your Bippy and things like that on her body, but you kind of get the impression that that's the era that we're talking about. It's kind of nice. I might have gone a little bit over with the shape of her teeth, but they're fun. She's definitely fun. This is Goldie Hawn. This is my version of Goldie. You knew Goldie like I know Goldie. And this is Frantz Kantor, and I will catch you on the flip side. Bye-bye.